First public statements we heard from CNN yesterday was to put the blame and the responsibility of this despicable act on the president and on me personally, when the person that is responsible for this is the person who made and created and put these suspicious packages in the hands and in the arms of innocent American citizens. That's the person responsible, and I find that disgraceful that that was one of the first statements, is that they made this and tried to put the blame on the president.
Right. And you answered Jeff Zucker right on Twitter right away, and he has not responded. We see publicly, but we did see the New York Times today, and they do have a fantasy scenario from fiction writers talking about one scenario where the president gets assassinated, where the Secret Service collaborates with Russians to kill him. What's your reaction to that?
I find it to just be absolutely abhorrent and disgraceful, and it's exactly the type of thing the president was talking about. Is that type of activity is certainly not helpful, certainly not in this time.
I'm shocked they ran it today.
I find it incredibly shocking that they would run that today.
Will the president be making any remarks about what we've already seen develop? You know, the scrambling to find out what's going on in Delaware. We assume something to do with Joe Biden's address. And this morning we wake up and find out that Robert DeNiro's restaurant had a package in it which was brought to the Bronx Detonation Center. So we assume it had bomb-making materials inside. Do you know, I know you had a schedule set up. Do you want to announce anything that might be changing?
I can tell you that the president has been briefed on both of these latest incidents by Chief of Staff Kelly, and probably receive further briefing later this morning. Yesterday, he was briefed by the United States Secret Service, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and DHS heads that we're continuing to monitor this, look for ways to prevent it, and frankly find out at the end of the day who is fully responsible for this, and make sure that we bring justice to that individual or individuals.
There's a tweet from John Brennan, response to the president. He's one of the ones that was supposed to get one of these packages. This is the one they sent to CNN. He just tweeted this. He said, "Stop blaming others. Look in the mirror. Your inflammatory rhetoric, insults, lies, and encouragement of physical violence are disgraceful. Clean up your act. Try to act presidential. The American people deserve much better. By the way, your critics will not be intimidated into silence." What's your reaction?
Look, the president, I think, could not have been more presidential yesterday when he spoke directly to the American people. He condemned this violence. Let's not get lost in who is responsible for this heinous act. It is the person who made and sent these suspicious packages. Let's not forget that that is ultimately the person that is responsible and will be held responsible by this administration.
You had no reaction directly to John Brennan, who seems to be breaking with tradition as a former head of the CIA and becoming what seems to be a pundit?
I think we've made our opinions on former Director Brennan pretty clear over the past several months. Certainly don't support the type of activity that he is engaged in, and don't think it's becoming of somebody that is a former director of the intelligence agency that he was.
Side note, of course, the midterm elections are just a little less than 2 weeks away. I know the president and his team have announced that apparently he's going to make some other stops. Given what's going on with these packages, will he continue on this very aggressive campaigning with the rallies and whatnot, or are they going to pare things back, or what's going on?
Certainly, as of right now, the president continues to lay out the case and the political differences of Democrats and Republicans, as he certainly should. The future and history of our country is at stake, and Americans have a decision to make in the next couple of weeks, and the president's going to lay out the case for why Republicans have been successful over the last 2 years under his leadership. We have a booming economy. We have a massive amount of job creation, particularly in manufacturing. We have trade deals that everyone said couldn't be done. We have a national security issue at the border, and we have to decide whether or not we want law and order at the border or whether or not we want open borders. The president's going to lay out that case, and Americans are going to make a decision, and I think they're going to make the right one.
12 days and counting. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, thanks so much for for giving us 15 minutes of your time this morning. You might be one of the busiest people in America. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you.
The president will be in Charlotte, North Carolina for a rally tomorrow night. They have really ratcheted up security there. They're expecting traffic to be pretty bad, too, because a lot of the streets will be closed.
And what you're looking at right there is outside one of the post offices in Newcastle County, Delaware, where in the last hour or so they realized that there was a package addressed to former Vice President Joe Biden, and it matched the description of all the other ones, and they have put it into a total containment vehicle, that is to say, and they're going to take it off and it's going to be examined. Let's bring in House Majority Whip Steve Scalise. He joins us right now. Hey, Mr. Scalise, what do you make of what we're seeing with this wave of packages addressed to these Democrats and prominent critics of the president's being delivered all across the country?
Well, good morning. This is very disturbing what you're seeing. I'm very fully supportive of law enforcement and confident that they're going to find out who exactly did this, and they're going to figure this out. And that person should be brought to justice, and it should be swift. But for now, it's a time for us to make sure that we're calming down the rhetoric and not pointing fingers at people. My goodness, we should all be focused on encouraging law enforcement, giving them all the tools they need to go and find out who's doing this.
So as somebody who almost bled to death when you were shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter at second base when you were just trying to practice for a softball game, what do you want everyone to know, and what do you hope that happens over the next 24 or 48 hours as we go on a massive hunt to find out who's responsible? What's going to be your focus, Steve?
Main focus is to make it clear that there's no place for this in American politics. You know, this is how things go in third world nations where people think that they can go and threaten and bully and intimidate and terrorize people based on their political views. That's not what our country is about. It's not who we're going to be about. So ultimately, law enforcement is going to figure out who did this, and we're going to move on as a country. But, you know, there's no place for it.
Right after this happened, right after these suspicious packages started we started to determine they were all being sent to these Democrats, people were on network shows blaming the president for this. John Brennan is even responding to the president's tweet this morning saying, stop blaming others, look in the mirror, blaming him for his inflammatory rhetoric and insults and lies, encouraging people to get violent. We've had Democrats that have encouraged people to be violent, get in the face, or it seems like they were encouraging violence. When you hear both sides having these arguments, what goes through your mind? Because you were targeted because you're a Republican. Today, the story's a little different in the fact that Democrats are being targeted. But is your message enough is enough?
It is, and look, I mean, the idea that somebody can use this and try to go and have a press conference and blame somebody else that has nothing to do with it when they don't even know the facts, this isn't the time to be pointing fingers. You know, we all ought to calm it down a little. You know, everybody's rhetoric should be, focused on the idea that we have a great nation where we can disagree with each other, but you don't make it personal. You don't resort to attacks. If you're threatening somebody else, you've pretty much lost the argument already. Focus on going and winning the debate. If you have better ideas, show your ideas. We're going to have an election in 12 days that is going to ultimately settle all of our political differences, and that's how we settle them in America, at the ballot box, not through violence.
I was wondering, Steve, did you ever blame Bernie Sanders for you being shot?
No.
So why do you think everyone seems intent on blaming the president?
You know, these are people that have hated everything the president stood for. I mean, Donald Trump ran as somebody laying out a very specific agenda for this country to make America great again, and he's doing it. I mean, all the things that he's done as president have been the things that he promised, and it's working. You know, we should be celebrating the fact that our economy is doing so well, that we're finally changing the direction of our country and getting things back on track. And if somebody's got a better idea or a better set of ideas, let them go lay that out. But they don't have an agenda. They just want to make this about personality, and they're against somebody. That's not what's going to win this election. I've been getting all around the country. People, first of all, they like the economic growth that we're having. They don't like the tone of politics when they see people threatening cabinet secretaries and saying, run people out of restaurants based on their political views. That's not who America is, and that's not going to win them the House or the Senate or whatever they're also trying to accomplish this election cycle. It's going to be a battle for ideas. I think we have better ideas, and what we're doing, working with President Trump, is actually working for the families who have been forgotten for so long. They're glad somebody's finally standing up for them.
Has this changed the way that you live your life when you go to the post? I mean, you go to your mailbox, or when you're even practicing for baseball?
I mean, you can't let it change the way you live your life. If you do, then they win. So ultimately, we've got to continue to go on with our life, be more vigilant. You know, people have been really good over the years, especially since September 11th, that if they see something suspicious, they report it.
Right.
And that's why you're seeing so many of these latest packages being reported. People always need to be vigilant in America because there are people who hate us for who we are and what our values are. It's what makes our country great is that we have these great values. There are people that want to come to our country to be a part of the American dream. There are people who want to come to our country to do us harm. And we've got to be aware of both.
Yeah. Mr. Scalise, one of the things that doesn't add up to some of the analysts we've had on the air is everybody knows that members of Congress, former presidents, prominent Democrats and Americans don't necessarily open their own mail. They go to a containment facility. I mean, every piece of mail you get at Congress is opened off-site, oftentimes in other states. So if they were trying to, you know, blow up the person, yeah, exactly, blow up the person that it was addressed to, that person doesn't open the envelope.
Yeah, who knows what the real motivation is, what they're really trying to accomplish. But ultimately, what I'm confident of is that they're going to get caught. And when they get caught, we'll know a lot more.
Yeah.
Right now, nobody knows anything about who's behind this. And so for them to try to give some kind of commentary about who's responsible for it when they don't even know who's responsible for it, or trying to assign blame to somebody, that's the kind of politics that people really are disgusted by. This isn't a time for that. It's a time for unifying. Let's not change what's great about America. We have confidence in law enforcement. We're going to figure out who did this, and we're going to continue to move forward as the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, the attack on you should have been the wake-up call. Obviously, it wasn't. Thanks so much, Steve Scalise. Appreciate it.